From the Subaru of Gwinnett Studio, this is Injury Insider with Derek Hayes. Injured in Georgia? Make the right call to the law office of Derek M. Hayes at 404-777-HURT. Injury Insider is presented by Status Home Design, your one-stop shop for all your home and gift needs.
Hello and welcome to Injury Insider with Derek Hayes on Business Radio X. We are broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett Studio in the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. This show will answer legal questions and debunk personal injury myths with insight and expertise. For nearly 25 years, Derek Hayes has exclusively represented injured parties in Georgia. Now he'd like to put that knowledge to work for you. My name is Lita Brooks, and it's my pleasure to introduce the star of the show, Derek Hayes. Good afternoon, Derek.
Good afternoon. Good to see you as always.
Thank you. Before we begin, a quick reminder that Injury Insider is brought to you by Status Home Design, your one-stop shop for all your home and gift needs, and by the law office of Derek M. Hayes. Injured in Georgia? Make the right call to the law office of Derek M. Hayes at 404-777-HURT. Okay, the last couple of Injury Insider shows have focused on defining legal terms related to personal injury claims that most people would not know. I know I, for one, did not. These terms were picked purposely because of current cases that you are handling. We talked about respondeat superior, dram shop laws, subsequent remedial measures, negligence per se, and the attractive nuisance doctrine. So I know I, for one, feel like I have a novice law degree at this point.
You pronounced every one of those correctly.
Thank you, right? We're getting a fantastic education here on these shows. Now, those terms may sound a little dull, but for those of you tuning in today for the first time, I urge you to go back and listen to these shows because it's fascinating information, how these translate, what they mean, and how it relates to personal injury claims. It's been a real education for everyone listening and a chance to talk more about the benefits of hiring you. But before we get to the topic for today, I have to ask you about a post I saw on your Instagram page this week. It was about World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. This is a real thing, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about this. All right, I don't think many people know about it, so let's talk about that post.
All right, let's talk about World Elder Abuse Awareness Day first. It's every June 15th. It was started by a joint resolution of the UN back in December of 2011. It's a day that's set aside to bring awareness to the growing numbers of our aging population, and that's throughout the world, not just in the U.S., but throughout the world, those that suffer great harm from others, elders. The UN specifically defines it as, and I'm going to read the quote, a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. So that's the language they actually used in the resolution. So here in the U.S., our Justice Department reports that about 10% of our population over the age of 65 experiences some form of abuse every year.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's a huge number, too, if you think about that. And you know, we are an aging population. So with that being said, 10% of anyone over the age of 65 has suffered some form of abuse. Now, my firm handles nursing home abuse and neglect cases, and I have for many years, and my eyes have, because of that, been open to things that are honestly very disturbing. It's awful. But the abuse itself can be physical, it can be psychological, it can be financial. Really, the physical abuse to me is really the worst aspect of it.
Oh, it is. It's hard to even talk about this because
it's tragic.
What comes to mind is your loved ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mom, dad, aunt, uncle.
Grandparents,
exactly,
anyone.
Exactly.
Yes.
So really, when you think about it, the physical abuse is kind of self-explanatory. I've seen physical attacks by staff members at nursing homes, attacks by other patients, patients being given the wrong medication that led to their death even. And the worst part is sometimes even sexual assaults on elderly people.
Oh, my gosh.
And if you think about it, many of these elder victims are completely helpless. They've lost their vision, their ability to talk, their memory, even sometimes the physical ability to fight their attackers. So they're unfortunately a helpless victim just there with nothing to defend themselves.
I think we talk, or as a society, as a culture, we think about children, right? But I don't think the elderly population, it gets as much attention. I don't think it's on the forethought. I think we put our loved ones in nursing homes when they need that level of care with the trust that they're going to take care of them.
And we should think about them. They're the ones that brought us up, and ultimately we need to take care of them in their latter years to make sure that they're provided all the resources and help and comfort that they need. The main reason why we posted about it is because it's happening far more than most people even realize, and I think it's important to bring awareness not only to the issue of elder abuse, but also to the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Again, most people don't know about it. The psychological abuse part of it, it could be manifested in fear. No one should ever live in fear. Whether you're a child, an adult, or an elderly person, you should not live in fear. And then the financial abuse, that's kind of self-explanatory as well. If someone's saved a lot of money over their lifetime and a bad person gets a hold of their account and drains that money, well, that's also abuse.
Can you give us some tips about what to do if we have aging loved ones that may be at risk of the physical harm?
Yeah, we'll talk about the physical harm and focus really on that. But yes, it's imperative that you visit your loved ones frequently if they are in a nursing home or an elderly care facility. Visit them frequently and have conversation with them as best you can. If they are able to use a cell phone, a smartphone with a camera, give it to them. Make sure you're on speed dial. Make sure they have access to that phone to record anything that's a concern they may have, but also, too, to reach out to you. And this may be a little embarrassing, but it's a tremendous tip, and that is check them often for bruises, cuts, abrasions, or any other signs of physical harm. They may not think about it. They may not want to tell you about it. They may be scared. They may have been threatened. If you say anything, then I'm going to get you even worse the next time.
Right.
So it's kind of up to you sometimes as the family member or friend, the loved one, to check them out. Also look for bed sores, poor hygiene, or even significant weight loss.
I could see just an elderly, they don't want to almost put anyone out. They don't want people to worry about them.
Right. That's
right.
a good way
So
to put it. Right.
They wouldn't want to say anything for the concern. I'm
don't
here.
worry about
yeah,
me.
don't worry about me. That sort of mentality. Yeah.
And you're right. Most elderly people do have that point of view. They're concerned, number one, they may be threatened, as I said, or, well, I just don't want them to have to worry about me any more than they already have. They've done so much.
This place is expensive. Putting me somewhere else could cost more money.
Yeah. And another thing, if you notice that they're suddenly confused more often when you're with them, or socially withdrawn, you try and sit and chat with them, they won't, or if they're showing signs of depression. And that's a big key right there. Those are also indicators of any kind of physical or psychological abuse. Another kind of a side note, a point that's become relatively new related to the COVID-19 outbreak is what nursing homes have done with Social Security money. This has kind of been in the news, and I know the feds are now investigating, but many nursing homes have been caught transferring money directly out of patients' accounts into the nursing home account from Social Security money. So victims, technically, of financial elder abuse are ones whose money was diverted from their Social Security into the account of the nursing home.
Wow.
And that's partly because during the shutdown, those nursing homes have been closed to visitors. So son, daughter, niece, nephew, grandchild who's come to visit mom, dad, grandmother, whomever it may be, has not really had the access to look at their financial statements unless they are on the checking account or savings account. And again, some of these Social Security checks have been deposited directly into accounts that they should not have gone into. And I'm hoping that the feds will do something tremendously appropriate. We'll go with that for those facilities that have done that. I could spend an entire show talking about elder abuse and nursing home neglect claims, and probably will in the future because it's that prevalent and needs to be brought to light. And one final point about this too is if you do suspect abuse or neglect, call me. Just call my office. I'll be happy to listen and discuss any potential claims or actions that we can take against the nursing home or those that were involved with the abuse of your loved one.
Before we move on, give everyone listening some tips. Let's say that you suspect. You don't have enough to build a case. You just think something is happening. Where do they start? I mean, is it a hidden camera? Is it what do they do?
There are all kinds of ways. Hidden camera, since you mentioned that, I did have someone who used a hidden camera and recorded some very bad activity in their, it was actually a grandmother's room. someone who was pretty much confined to the bed all the time, 24 hours a day. And she lost her vision. She lost her ability to speak. She couldn't even roll over in the bed on her own. And during the middle of the night, 2 employees, as awful as this is, came into her room and engaged in a sexual act on the bed next to her at the foot of the bed. And this was recorded by a hidden camera in the room. So, yes, those are tremendously effective. Now, that's a criminal act as well as some potential civil issues there as well. But then there are other things. You like I said earlier, you can look for bruises, abrasions, cuts. Try as best you can to talk to your family member or friend. If they can't, talk to other patients. Try and befriend as best you can some of the ones who are caretakers there, or ones that have access to your family member or friend more often than you may. If there's someone in the room with your loved one or in the room next door, get to know their family member. And hey, if you can make a chance to stop in and check on my mom when you're here looking at your mom, then just reach out to me. Send me a text. Let me know she's doing okay. And you can do the same for them. If they're not able to go, you can get their number and share information when you go up there.
Pictures, videos,
yes.
Things that would probably be self-explanatory,
Sure.
right? Just maybe even keeping a journal. This day I noticed this bruise or whatever it might be.
I've had issues before where people have called where ants had gotten into a room, and it was someone who was bedridden, and the ants had made their way into the bed and under the covers and pretty well attacked both of her legs.
Oh, my gosh.
And no one had checked her in the period of time that it took for the ants to make their way through the window into the bed and then underneath the covers to attack. And that's a pretty long period of time for that to happen.
Wow. It's very eye-opening, and I'm really glad we covered this today. It's something that we should all be aware of as family members and loved ones get older. It's something everyone's going to have to deal with. Hopefully not the abuse part, but finding nursing homes and care facilities as we age. I hope everyone takes this information to heart and will call you, Derek, if they suspect any abuse. That Instagram post caught my attention, and I'm glad it did. I'm glad we talked about it. All right, let's move on to today's main topic. I understand that you want to talk about social media and how it can affect your personal injury claim. I don't think many people are aware of the connection between the two. Can someone's social media negatively affect their claim?
Very simply, yes. And that's a resounding yes. Social media has taken over so much of our life on a day-to-day basis, and it does have many positive effects. However, it can also have many, many, many negative effects in a personal injury claim that most people don't even think about or don't realize. And before we kind of get into that, I want to lay a quick foundation with stats. You know how much I love to talk about stats, and I've looked some up
with your
purposely
stats
because it's that important. So Facebook alone, let's start with that. Facebook alone has over 2.3 billion, that's with a B, billion users. 90.9% of smartphone users have the Facebook app on their phone. So less than 10% don't use Facebook on their phone, but 90.9% of people do have that app on their phone. 72% of all adults, and that would be people 18 years of age and above, 72% of all adults in the U.S. use at least one form of social media daily. More specifically, 40% of those over the age of 65 use some form of social media daily. The biggest forms of social media include Facebook, Tumblr, WhatsApp, WeChat, Qzone, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Snapchat.
Do you use all these?
No. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Some of those I've never even heard of.
I haven't either.
And when I was doing the research and looking these things up, and I'm like, what the heck is Qzone?
Right.
A couple others, I had no clue what they were. And kind of on a side note, it was just a short time ago when nobody had ever heard of Facebook.
Right.
So it's a matter of time before some of those.
Or Snapchat.
Right.
That's relatively new. TikTok.
Right. And Snapchat's fun. It's an interesting app. It's
you
fun.
do love Snapchat.
Yeah. Well, I like the Snapchat filter.
Filters. You don't actually post.
No, I've never
I should clarify
posted.
that. He's not on Snapchat.
No.
He has fun with the filters.
The filters are kind of cool. And if you've not looked at it, it's fun. But again, that kind of proves the point. We all use some form of social media. Even if we don't post, we still look at it. There are also many, many, many other social media platforms, but those are the ones that were considered to be among the top. When you're playing Words with Friends, which people love to play Words with Friends, you can even chat with strangers while you're playing. And that's another way of, I guess, categorizing or classifying that as social media. Now, let me give you more specific stats here. 73% of adults use YouTube. 68% of adults use Facebook. 35% of adults use Instagram, 29% use Pinterest, 27% use Snapchat, 25% use LinkedIn, 24% use Twitter, and 22% use WhatsApp. And then those are the ones that are among the highest used. And again, those are adults. And we all know that kids love cell phones.
Yeah, 18 and under probably has even higher stats.
Yeah, high school.
Sure.
All those apps are very prevalent among high school kids. Anybody that's got a cell phone, a smartphone, they're using these not daily, but minutely, if that's a word.
Oh, absolutely.
Every single minute.
Well, we all know social media has definitely changed the way we interact with each other, and you just supported that with those stats. But why is this an important topic to cover specific to personal injury?
Well, there's so much importance to it that I was doing this and putting it all together. I've decided to make 2 shows out of it. So our next show will continue the topic of social media,
okay, and
how it can affect your injury claim. But I want to focus on Facebook today because it's the most popular of all of them. And again, we'll get into some of the other ones in the next show. But everyone needs to understand important points. And I wrote these out because it's that important. Number 1, absolutely nothing, underline that word, nothing you post online ever completely disappears from the internet. Once it's out there, it's out there. Number 2, think about that for a second. Post, likes, comments, pictures, anything. It never, ever, ever completely disappears from the internet. Next, nothing you post online is completely protected from others seeing it, even if you change your privacy settings to the most extreme levels. So on Facebook, as an example, you can make it where it's only friends, or only certain people can see it, or friends of friends, or you make it completely public. But even those privacy settings, it's never completely protected online. And then finally, once something is on the internet, it is not just yours to know anymore.
That is very scary and should make everyone think twice before you post.
Sure.
All right. How can Facebook affect your personal injury case?
All right, let's start with the understanding about the law. And that's where we need to start because this is the legal topic.
Okay.
So Georgia courts can and many times will allow the introduction of social media post and evidence during trial, including Facebook, as long as it can be sufficiently authenticated, meaning that they can prove that the actual person who's the plaintiff or sometimes even the defendant, that it was on their page, they were aware of it, that it's been sufficiently authenticated either as their own or their awareness of that post on their Facebook page.
Well, that seems like an easy question. Is this yours?
Well, of course.
Yes or no,
that's it.
right?
It's a very minor standard
sure.
to meet and very easy, quite frankly. It's usually explored first in what we call the discovery phase of a case. The discovery phase of the case is where you're sent things called interrogatories, which are questions you have to respond to, and then also too as a follow-up in your deposition. They can and they will ask, what social media platforms do you use? And they'll list them. How about Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? They'll go through the list. And any of those you say, yeah, I've used that. Okay, what's your username? And you have to give it to them. They'll ask for it, and you've got to provide it. So discovery is very liberally construed. They can ask for virtually anything they want to. There are some limitations, but they can ask for virtually anything they want to. That in and of itself may not be admissible at trial, but it may lead to something that is admissible. Kind of as a separate example, if you're on the witness stand, either in your deposition or eventually at a trial, and especially in the deposition, they can ask, what is your social security number? They're not going to ask it at trial, but in a depo, what is your social security number? Now, that in and of itself is never admissible. It's not. But having that may lead to something that is admissible by putting it in a database to do a cross-check or a cross-reference of your criminal history, your driving history, whatever. So likewise, asking about your username and sometimes even your passwords can lead to something that is admissible. So they're going to ask for it. They're going to review it. They're going to look at all your social media, whatever it may be. They're going to take screenshots early and often, meaning that if you are involved in a car wreck, for example, and you submit the claim to the insurance company, either you do it on your own or as an attorney, I represent you and I submit the notice of claim letter, they're going to look your name up. They're going to check out your social media platforms very early and very often. They're going to try and friend you. They're going to send friend requests. Now, usually not when an attorney's involved, but it's not uncommon to get friend requests from strangers, people you don't know. And sometimes if you're in an injury claim, well, that could be someone who's an investigator. someone hired by the insurance company, or even an adjuster, or the defendant, the person that caused the wreck, or one of their friends. They're going to try and friend you.
Or just someone in the office,
Exactly.
right? Someone this is your job. Pay
Yes.
attention to
Yes,
this
yes.
social media.
And I don't know if it's an ego thing, but people like to say, oh, I've got X number of friends on Facebook.
Right.
Oh, well, if you don't know those people, don't accept their friend request. That's very simple. They're going to constantly check it. They're not going to just look once. They're going to look very often. They'll question you about those kind of things at trial. If the judge considers it to be admissible, which ultimately a judge is the one that can determine if it is admissible or not, but they're going to ask you about certain things at trial that they can gain from reviewing your Facebook page. As I said before, they can request your not only your username but your password, and at certain points you do have to produce that. You are potentially going to be required to produce that, which means your messenger part of your Facebook. They're going to look at the conversations. They're able to potentially look at deleted posts. So again, those are things that Facebook exposes you to by using it and having an active or potentially, at some point down the road, a personal injury claim.
So it sounds like it's fair game to say that they're going to look at your Facebook page, and based on what you have, they can use it against you.
Yes. Not only they may be, but yes, that's a definitive they will.
Okay.
I can guarantee that. Let me kind of give you some examples of how it can be a negative to you, but I also want to talk about, kind of wrap this part up eventually, about a current client who was brilliant, and I've told him that, by using the Facebook Live platform. We're going to talk about what he did in a little bit. But let's talk about the negatives first. So do not discuss your wreck on Facebook. And again, we're only talking about Facebook today. We'll talk about the other social media platforms in the next show, but just in Facebook, do not discuss your wreck. The how, the where, the when, the who, or even things like what the weather was like that day, or what kind of clothes you were wearing, or where you were going. Do not discuss your wreck at all, because that information is very valuable eventually to an insurance company, either in your depot or eventual trial. Do not post pictures or videos of the car that you were driving, the other car that was involved in the wreck, or your injuries. Don't put those pictures out there. Again, they can screenshot those. They can use those against you later on. If you go to some sort of social events like the bar or dancing or concert, or maybe travel like the beach, those kind of things, be careful, because those pictures can be used against you. There was a teenager that was in a wreck that used social media, Facebook, or it may have been a friend that posted pictures of some tumbling cheer routines on the beach after she'd been in a car wreck. And that came back to haunt her, because those photographs, that video was used against her. But it was out there on social media, on Facebook.
You're going to show you're not that injured.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you're out there doing a pyramid on the beach.
Mm-hmm. And it could have been very painful to do that.
Sure.
But if you're with your buddies and say it's a cheer trip or competition, and you may not actually be competing in the competition itself because of your injuries, but you're just goofing off with your buddies on the beach, those kinds of things can come back to haunt you. Now, even old photos can be portrayed in a bad light. If you're pictures of you drinking at a bar or intoxicated, or the life of the party kind of photos, partying with friends, doing crazy or illegal things. People post all kinds of pictures out there. Those kinds of things can be used to later on come back and haunt you in a personal injury claim. This is one that a lot of folks don't think about, but I think it's extremely important. People like to use the check-in part of their Facebook app. I'm checking in at church or at the mall or at a theater performance, whatever it may be. Well, checking in can also be used against you as well. If you think about this, if you go to a bowling alley and you're injured, terribly injured, you're not able to bowl, but you check in at the bowling alley. Well, later on, they're going to argue were there bowling. You'll have to say, no, I wasn't. But it's still going to be a question for a jury to determine, well, wait a minute, why were you at the bowling alley?
It puts a question mark where there might not be one.
Or a trampoline park for a birthday party. We have kids, and if kids go to a birthday party and you check in, or somebody else checks in and tags you at ABC Trampoline Park, well, same kind of thing. Well, wait a minute, why were you there? Here's another one. If you drop say you're a husband and you're injured, or a wife, and you drop your spouse off at the gym so they can work out, and you sit in the car and read a book because you're not able to work out, and you check in at the gym, they're going to easily argue, well, you checked in because you were there working out. Well, no, I wasn't. It's going to be up to a jury to determine whether or not they think the statement you say when you say, no, I wasn't, is self-serving, or if you really were there working out or trying to work out or doing things you shouldn't have been doing. So again, you got to think about that. Giving daily updates on your condition, innocuous comments like I'm fine, or it's a good day, or those kind of things can also be used to haunt you. You may post a picture of your child graduating from high school, and you're standing there, and somebody in the comments says, "Oh, you look great. Have you recovered from your injuries yet from your car wreck?" "Oh, I'm fine." Well, we all don't want to go into a long, drawn-out response. "I'm fine" is a very quick, easy response, and you may not be, but it's something that can eventually be used against you.
But even the long, drawn-out response can be used against you.
Exactly. You ignore that response or that comment, or delete the comment even, because it's something that if you want to reach out to them on the phone and call and discuss it, do it. But don't post it for everyone to see.
You're making it sound like we can't post anything.
Well, I'm going to get there. I'll get there in a minute. But, making a post where you're very emotional or angry about your wreck can make you look very mean-spirited eventually to a jury, or an emotional breakdown because of the wreck can, again, it could put you in a bad light in the eyes of a jury. Facebook stories. People use Facebook stories nowadays. They disappear, but there are ways still to be able to pull those stories back up and see the photographs or comments that may have been made by you or someone else. And even if you don't post, but somebody tags you in a post, depending on their settings, that could be public. You got to think about that too. So be careful about what your friends post. If you see something and somebody's tagged you in it, delete it, or take the post or the tag off of your page in your name so that it's not going to show up.
It's very enlightening, because we started with the stats. We use this every single day. So while a personal injury claim is going on, even before it starts, you need to be aware, you need to be cautious, right? I mean, that's the lesson that we're taking from this, that
Yes.
all of this could come back to haunt you. Again, I'm thinking, a graduation or a birthday party. I mean, these are things that aren't even relative to the accident themselves,
Right.
and yet could hurt your claim.
Well, let me give you another example about a graduation picture. Let's say, for example, you've been in a car wreck the week before and you broke your foot, and you've had to use crutches to get around to that graduation. Well, it comes time to take photos of your kid and you and the rest of the family with your kid. Well, you don't want to be pictured with crutches.
Right. You're going to hand them off
So,
to the side.
here, can somebody hold these for a minute? And they do. And you are struggling, but you're able to stand there, lean on someone else so the picture can be made. And let's say if you're a female, you have a dress that covers the boot. And so you're standing there, the boot can't be seen, you're not using crutches, and it's 2 weeks after your car wreck. Well, the insurance company, I can guarantee you, is going to say, look, she didn't need crutches. She's not even wearing her boot. Well, it's because the boot's not visible because of the dress, and you didn't want to be on crutches for your kid's graduation picture that's going to be with you and them for the rest of their life.
What are some other things that could hurt you?
Yeah, this is another kind of interesting point. We've talked about some, but let's talk about some other less obvious things. So if you've posted videos in the past of you driving recklessly, if you're a teenager and you're doing donuts in a parking lot and you want to impress your friends and post that video, and you get a little older and think about it, you need to think twice about posting those kinds of videos, or other videos that could post you as a less or portray you rather as a less safe driver. Say, for example, you make a comment about, I was able to get from point A to point B in X number of hours. I had to have been going 70. And clearly it's an acknowledgement of speeding. Well, if you're arguing about how a car wreck occurred, those kinds of things can portray you as a bad driver, habitually reckless potentially, and a jury could think twice about finding the other person completely at fault if they think you're a notoriously bad driver. Posting about other tickets or speeding tickets or whatever it may be, any kind of other legal trouble you've had, it's still going to put you in a bad light. If you have chronic aches and pains, and we all tend to have those kind of things as we get a little older, don't post about that. Everybody doesn't need to hear about, well, I got up this morning, my back was killing me. And then 2 weeks later you have a car wreck. Wait a minute. You claimed your back was injured in a car wreck. Well, you 2 weeks earlier said, I got up this morning. Man, I'm getting older. My back's hurting.
Oh, my gosh. I know people that post like that.
I do, too. I do, too. And every time I read it, I kind of cringe.
I just scroll. I don't like those posts. I just scroll through.
I don't either.
Come on.
I don't either. I get it. So,
yes.
Posting.
But people do it.
Well, here's another kind of side note to that. If you post something and then you realize, maybe I shouldn't have done that, and you delete it, think about this for a second. The other side is still going to potentially have access to that deleted post. And they're not going to argue, well, they just thought twice about it and removed it. They're going to say you were trying to hide something hide evidence of not, your injuries not being so bad or whatever. Or they'll try and use it to confuse a jury and maybe make them not like you because they think, oh, he posted this really bad thing and then he deleted it, trying to hide evidence, or he changed his mind, and it shows that he's mean-spirited and he shouldn't have done that. So those deleted things, again, you got to think twice about putting it out there to begin with, because if you do delete it, it can still be used against you later on as a negative.
It's kind of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. In that scenario,
we're getting there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. Oh my goodness.
Ultimately, it's all about thinking ahead before you post. You got to think in terms of, okay, what if? Mm-hmm. The what if game can make you think twice about doing a lot of things. But let's also talk about other things. It's kind of tempting to tell the world about the person that hit you and, oh, this crazy driver, this idiot, whatever word you want to use, and I'm not going to use some of those. But again, that could portray you as very mean and hateful and mean-spirited to a jury of 12. And it only takes one of those 12 people to look at it in a bad light and be angry with you for posting what you posted. Even if the person truly is a bad driver, they're still going to think twice about being kind to you with a verdict. Let's talk about positive, fun, exciting, maybe outdoorsy kind of post. Those are innocent and can kind of be an escape from your pain that you may be going through while you're recovering from your injuries. But it can also be argued that, well, you really aren't hurt. Look, you're out there outdoors having fun, exciting, interesting things, and you're not really that hurt. You're able to do that. Then the opposite of that is also kind of true. Negative post. Oh, I'm depressed, anxiety. I'm fearful to get behind the wheel again. I don't want to ride in a car. I'm always hurting, always struggling. Well, that's a pity party. Mm-hmm. Juries do not like pity parties. They want to hear about what happened to you, but they don't want to read about all the depression and all the other things you're going through as a social media post for the entire world to hear about. So just as a positive can potentially be used against you, so can that negative.
Sure. It's just like we were just saying, we know people who post in pity party every morning, right. And we roll through those because you don't want to hear it.
Woe is me.
No one likes that.
All right. And it's you were talking about this kind of earlier. When you talk about social media, and I'm going to again focus just on Facebook, it's best to just take a vacation from social media. I know it's tough because a lot of people are truly, and this is the word, addicted to Facebook and other forms of social media. It's okay to read other people's posts. It's okay to, look at the links that people put out there, but just don't post. Just don't do anything with it while you're recovering from your injuries and while your claim's active. It's best to just give it a rest. Just let it be. And then remember, too, while you're on that little social media Facebook vacation, after all said and done, your case is settled, or you go to a trial and you get a jury verdict, well, then it's fair game to talk about whatever you want to about that case at that point. But don't do it while you're actively treating or while the claim is pending.
And
Not
I'm
a good
certain
idea.
If you had a car accident, everyone close to you would know, right? They would be checking in, and there's not a soul in the world that wouldn't understand. I am on social media break. I have a case going on, right? It's
utilize your phone.
Everyone would understand that,
especially if you're home. And,
right.
And sometimes I know when you're in pain, the last thing you want to do is talk on the phone a lot. But you can have your family to help out. Hey, can you please call so-and-so? They've asked about it. My church members, my Sunday school class members, my neighbors, my friends from community activities. Can you just call and let them know, what's going on?
Yeah.
It's better to do it by word of mouth and not post it for everyone to see. Because as we said earlier, once it's out there, it never, ever, ever disappears. Ever.
Right. You don't have to announce, I'm taking a break.
No, exactly. Yeah.
So they can't see what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Keep that to yourself.
Right,
okay.
Right.
All right. You mentioned that you wanted to talk about a current client that used Facebook Live to his benefit. Tell us about that. What did he do?
Yeah, this is a current client of mine, and he told me he was going to listen, so I'm sure he's going to listen today. But he was riding in a Lyft, and as he got in the Lyft, his driver was, they were on 285, and his driver was very erratic. She was weaving in and out of traffic on 285. She was yelling and cussing at every car she passed. She was driving on the shoulder of the road.
Let me interject. If you're listening and you do not live in Metro Atlanta, 285 is an expressway.
Yes,
right? That in
very, very busy. It circles the entirety of Atlanta.
Right. Circles the city. Just so they it's not a country road somewhere. That is a major expressway.
Yeah, it's 6 lanes in some areas in each direction. It's crazy. It's very, very busy. It's the kind of road that there really is no time when it's not busy. But he's riding in the Lyft, and his driver's all over the place. She's yelling, she's screaming, she's blaring music to the point where he can't even hear himself talk. or think. And so he thought about it for a second, and he was scared. He really genuinely was scared in the back seat. So he pulled out his cell phone and he went on Facebook Live, and he started live streaming video from the back seat of the Lyft. Now, I'm not talking about just a friend of his driving. This was a Lyft, like an Uber. It was a Lyft. He's riding in the back seat of a Lyft, and as he's live streaming, he basically tagged it and said, if something happens to me, I'm paraphrasing, then this is the lady that did it to me. And so he live streamed some video. But after he was through live streaming, he continued to video, and he actually caught the impact. She rear-ended a car in front of her. Again, as she's weaving in and out of traffic, he caught that on video, the actual impact.
Oh, my goodness.
And it knocked the phone out of his hand. The impact was that severe. But even with the phone laying on the floorboard and it's looking straight up at the roof of the car, you could hear her still yelling and cussing and screaming at the top of her lungs about what had happened. And the interesting thing is she never turned and said, hey, buddy, I'm sorry. You okay back there? My bad. Are you okay? Are you bleeding? Nothing along those lines. He ended up getting on video the officer showing up at the scene after it happened and putting cuffs on her as she was arrested for DUI.
Wow. Driving a Lyft.
Yes, exactly.
Rear-ended. On
Driving,
285.
Right. He's a passenger in a Lyft. He thought enough about it to video how crazy she was driving, and he caught the impact on camera, the moment of impact, and the aftermath of her not asking about him or his injuries, and also the point where she was being put in cuffs right then and there at the scene. So this evidence is tremendously beneficial for me and for him pursuing his claim. I want to also, too, just one last point about social media. Go to my website. I've got a blog post out there now that's about social media. You can read a little bit about some of the things we talked about today. And as I said, next show, we're going to get into some of the other platforms. And I've got another good story to tell about YouTube video. It's a YouTuber who, well, I'm not going to give it away, but helped me
There's
out
a teaser
tremendously.
that next show is going to be, again, another cliffhanger of a story, right?
A YouTuber defendant that did not think about what he was putting on YouTube after the wreck.
Okay. Well, I've read that blog post. It's fantastic information, as was this show. Again, another expertise and all your information. Thank you so much. We have a question that was submitted online that I want to read before we wrap up the show. All right. This is from Tristan in Brazelton, Georgia. Tristan wrote in to your website, if I get injured in a car accident but don't recognize the effects of an injury until months later, is there a statute of limitations to pursue legal action?
Yes, there is a statute of limitations, and we'll talk about that first. The statute is generally 2 years here in Georgia for personal injury claims. There are things that can make that change. If the injured party is under the age of 18, the statute tolls, which means it delays until the person turns 18, and the statute starts on their 18th birthday. If someone's declared mentally incompetent, same thing, the statute tolls, or if someone's on active military duty, those are examples of when a statute would toll, but generally it's 2 years from the date of the wreck. Now, the rest of the question asks about if you realize you're injured months later and you want to go and get treatment, I assume is what they were asking about. The answer to that is it comes down to the doctor. It's unusual for someone to be involved in a car wreck and not feel the effects of their injuries until months later. That's unusual. It doesn't mean it won't happen. Mm-hmm. I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't render that medical opinion. But if you do go to a doctor a couple of months after your car wreck, and they can conclusively say that the injuries they're treating you for were caused by that blunt force trauma of the car wreck, and they can directly link it back to it, then, well, sure, we can look into being able to connect the dots between the wreck and whatever the issues may be with your injuries. But that's going to come down to the doctor rendering that kind of opinion.
Sure. Well, Tristan, I hope you're listening. I hope that answered your question. Derek, tell everyone listening how they can submit questions to you that we can discuss on the show.
Yes. The best way to get a question into me, go to my website. It's Derek, D-E-R-E-K, the letter M as in Matthew, Hayes, Hays.com. So DerekMHayes.com. If you go to my website, you'll see a podcast tab. You can click that tab, and then there's a part there where you can enter your question. All I need to know is a name and your question. That's it. You don't have to enter any other personal information. Just give me that, and I'll be happy to address that directly on one of the later shows. Also, too, you can submit a question directly about any potential claim you may be involved in, because there is a place there where you can put questions. There's actually a conversation or a chat box that comes down, and you can submit your question or whatever it may be you want to talk about there, and I'm the one that will call you. I'll discuss it with you at length, and if there's something I can help you with, I'll be happy to do that. You can also check out my Facebook page. We talked about Facebook today. Well, the Law Office of Derek M. Hayes is my Facebook page for the firm. You can also look at my Instagram, the Law Office of Derek M. Hayes, or Twitter. But the best way to reach out to me is call me. My phone number is 404-777-HURT or 678-225-0970.
We wrapped up talking about car accidents, but we started the show with elder abuse and possibly nursing home neglect. So anyone that is, has questions or is suspicious that something is happening to a loved one, reach out. All the channels that Derek just provided. It's a fantastic resource, and he is here to help. Thank you so much for joining us on Injury Insider with Derek Hayes, presented by Status Home Design and the Law Office of Derek M. Hayes. Don't forget that you can enjoy any of our episodes anytime by visiting businessradiox.com, selecting the Gwinnett Studio, and then clicking on Injury Insider with Derek Hayes. This program is also available on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, for Derek Hayes, I'm Lita Brooks, and you've been listening to Injury Insider on Business Radio X.